Hello, I'm Bob Kraft. We're here at the Kruse Museum Complex right off I-69 at exit 126. We're currently in the Kruse Automotive and Carriage Museum. We're in the gallery of the commercial vehicles. In our commercial vehicle gallery, we have a nice truck collection, including this 1928 Mack truck, along with another Mack truck on the far side, this white over here, and an Indiana on my right, as well as a Ford Model T to the left. We also have in our commercial vehicle gallery, we have different buggies that would have been used by businesses, milk trucks, other delivery vehicles. We have a real Conestoga wagon dating back to 1798, and we also have a Wells Fargo stagecoach. It's a very interesting display and dates over a long period of time when commercial vehicles were used for all kinds of transporting of goods and services. The Conestoga wagon you see before you is over 200 years old. The Conestoga wagon is actually the original mobile home. People would live in these for over a year, sometimes for about 6 months as they traveled across country, the early pioneers, to find a new place to settle. And then after they arrived, they'd live there up to 6 months while they're building their new homestead. And so the original form of an RV or mobile home is right before you. The next gallery we're in is the Public Service and Public Safety Gallery. Has different coaches from the ambulance to the dog catcher and the police wagon, as well as the U.S. mail and our fire truck collection. We have 3 different fire engines in our public safety collection. One is a horse-drawn pumper made in St. Paul, Minnesota, quite old vehicle. And then we also have an Auburn No. 2, which is American LaFrance fire engine, made in 1930, and it was bought originally by the Auburn Fire Department for $6,750. The first Duesenberg we have in our luxury gallery is a long wheelbase Duesenberg owned by the originator of eBay, Jeff Skoll. We also have another Duesenberg here that was donated to the foundation, the Kruse Foundation and Museums, by a couple in Texas. It was originally ordered by one of Al Capone's gangsters, and we were fortunate enough after the restoration for it to be donated here. They tried to give it to the Smithsonian, and the Smithsonian didn't want it, so we were able to acquire it and have it in our museum. We also have a Rolls Royce there owned by a gentleman in Texas, as well as this L29 Cord. It's almost a perfect car, owned by Bill Cranston, a longtime resident of Steuben County. He lived up by Fremont Cranston's Reef and owned a lot of property there, and he has 2 or 3 cars here on display at the Kruse Automotive and Carriage Museum. The Duesenberg right beyond Bill Cranston's car is owned by the foundation and won Meadowbrook in 2003. Also in our luxury vehicle collection, we have these carriages, royal coaches. The first one was owned by King George V of Hanover. It was his ceremonial coach. The other coach is a coronation coach from King Ernest Augustus of Hanover. These are world-renowned coaches that won international awards. They're owned by Carl Casper, who owns a lot of the car collection and carriage collection in our museum. These coaches have traveled throughout the world to be in competition with other carriage restorers, and these are some of the top ones in the world. In our personal transportation gallery, we have several coaches and carriages also owned by Carl Casper, represent different kinds of carriages that people just privately would have owned or ridden in, as well as several vehicles that would be the average citizen would have owned, including a 1928 Stutz, a 57 Chevy, and an early Ford Model V8. The oldest motorized vehicle in our collection, the personal transportation, is this 1898 Lenef. It's got a tiller steering wheel drive, and also is driven by a 1-cylinder gasoline engine, and it has a big leather belt, drive belt, that goes around the wheel to make it go. This vehicle won at Meadowbrook in 2005. It's best in its class. Our presidential collection includes this pristine carriage made right in Elkhart, Indiana. President Ulysses S. Grant owned this carriage, along with many other carriages, I'm sure, but this is a very nice example of a carriage made right here in Indiana that Mr. Grant owned while he was president. Along with that is a 1929 Cadillac that was given to President Herbert Hoover, right when he took office, this Cadillac Corporation gave him this car as a gift, and after about 6 months he traded it in for a different model, but this was the one he had right when he took office as president. This sleigh was property of Mrs. McKinley, President McKinley's wife. A very ornate sleigh in original condition, has not been restored. It's in such pristine condition now with all the ornate paintings on it. We'd hate to do anything to take away from that. Next to the sleigh is President McKinley's hearse that he was laid to rest in after he died of the gunshot wound that took his life. It also has not been restored. It's been left in original condition since the time of his funeral, and it has begun to deteriorate slightly, but it also is such a good piece of history that we hate to do anything right now to take away from the historical value. Very near our presidential collection is a very interesting car, a 1946 Ziz, which was actually Stalin's car from Russia. A lot of people, car enthusiasts, will look at it and say it looks a great deal like a Packard. That's because Russia, when they started the Ziz car company, they actually just bought a lot of Packard parts and shipped them over and imported them and started their own car company. This particular car has a great deal of historical provenance, as Stalin and Montgomery and Eisenhower all rode in this car in a parade in 1946 after the war. It's a very exciting piece of history that's on display here at the Kruse Automotive and Carriage Museum. A large portion of our exhibit here at the Kruse Automotive and Carriage Museum is our Hollywood and entertainment exhibits, and starts off with our Buffalo Bill stage wagon that was part of the Buffalo Bill Wild West show. He was one of the first great entertainers as he traveled throughout the country and Europe, reenacting great battles of the Wild West and different Indian shows throughout America. This is an original wagon from one of his actual stagecoach shows that he did, Deadwood Stagecoach. Along with that, we have the Knight Rider vehicle from KITT, the talking car with all the high technology that would be able to talk to its driver and actually operate on its own. When you come and visit the museum, KITT's usually talking to you, but we have it turned off today for purposes of shooting the video. Along with KITT, we also have the General Lee, which is one of the original General Lees from the Dukes of Hazzard show. Carl Casper owns these Hollywood vehicles, and he was the originator of both the Knight Rider and the General Lee car and owns the rights to those. He also created the A-Team van, which is on display in our museum from the television show The A-Team and Mr. T. We have Fonzie's motorcycle from the television series Happy Days. We also have the Batmobile here on display from the Batman Returns movie, starring Michelle Pfeiffer, Michael Keaton, and Danny DeVito as the Penguin. We have the Penguin's duck, as well as one of the Bat boats on display near the Batcave that houses our Batmobile. Two other Batmobiles that were on display briefly during 2006 and early 2007 was the Batman Forever car, as well as the original TV series Batmobile. That creates a lot of attention as we take it through parades and local events. We have a large collection of hot rods and custom cars built by Carl Casper, one of the most famous designers in the world of custom cars. He had his start in the 60s and 70s. Actually, when he was 16 years old, won the National Hot Rod Competition. A lot of his trophies are on display, as well as many of his original creations that are known worldwide in the custom car and hot rod world. A couple of celebrity cars on display here at our museum are Andy Griffith's 1935 Packard. He restored this vehicle to perfect condition and was wanting to sell it in 2005 and wasn't able to get what he wanted out of it, and said, "I'll give it away before I sell it for that much." And so we asked him if he wanted to give it to the museum, and he said sure. And so this is one of our cars we own by the foundation of the museums, courtesy of Andy Griffith. Along with Andy Griffith's car on display, we have Elvis Presley's limousine. He had many limousines, but this is one of them that he actually rode in and used for his personal use. We're excited to have such a rich piece of history on display here at the museum. This is one of the most recent donations to our museum. Came to us from a donor in Texas who donated this pristine, absolutely completely restored, ready to run, ready to race car of Michael Andretti's. It's his championship car, the only championship car that he ever won a championship in the kart series from 1991. Got the most points that year in kart, and we're proud to have this on display here at our museum. Beyond our Indy collection, we have some NASCARs on display. This one, Dale Earnhardt car, the famous number 3, is on display. We use this car as a promotional piece a lot in different parades and shows that we take our display to and advertise for the museum. We also have a Sitco number 21 NASCAR Busch Series car. We have a collection of dragsters, also owned by Carl Casper, one of our biggest donors here at the museum. One of them includes the Young American, which is set the land speed record back in 1971. We're excited to have Carl's collection of drag cars here. We have a great collection of Indy 500 cars, including the Scott Sharp car. It's also donated by the gentleman in Texas. It was restored to perfect racing condition and just put on display last year as it was donated to the museum. Scott Sharp won the first year of the IRL in 1996. He won the championship with this, getting the most points that year driving this car right here. Next to that is Arie Luyendyk's winning 500 car from the Indy 500 in 1999. He finished right next to Scott Goodyear, who has the Firestone car on display right next to him as Arie Luyendyk beat him by about 3 feet going over the line. Scott Brayton, local racer from Coldwater, Michigan, has 3 cars on display here. This number 60 Green Menard car was Scott's car that he set on the pole when he was on the pole position in the Indy 500. Scott was a good friend of the Kruses and sponsored by Mr. Kruse, and unfortunately lost his life to racing. The Kruse Special here was raced in 2002 for 3 races by Kelly Racing. Tony Renner was the driver, and Mr. Kruse was fortunate enough to be able to sponsor this car and be a part of that into that season. Next to the Kruse Special is Gordon Johncock's Indy 500 winning car from 1973. Gordon Johncock's a local racer from the Michigan area and still resides there and is a friend of our museum today. One of our developing exhibits here in the Racing Gallery is an exhibit to tell the story of the Northeast Indiana racing, also actually in the whole Midwest, including Ohio and Michigan, as we have a group of men, old-time racers, that are putting together this exhibit, telling all the great history that happened near the Fort Wayne area and Bear Field Raceway and the Fort Wayne Speedway and the Villa Racetrack, as well as the Angola Speedway and many others here in the Midwest. And it's exciting as this exhibit develops to see all the new artifacts and the cars that are coming in to tell that story of the racing heritage here right here in Northeast Indiana. A new exhibit in 2006 here at the Kruse Museum Complex was the James Dean Gallery. It was previously owned, operated down in Fairmont, Indiana, right near Gas City. The owner of the collection was having problems down there making it, and decided to sell part of his collection, but also wanted to preserve some of it, and we offered to house some of it here so that this great collection of one of the greatest Indiana celebrities ever could be preserved and displayed right here in Northeast Indiana. The James Dean exhibit is on display here for a minimum of 2 years. We're hoping that it will get moved back to Fairmont, Indiana, where his hometown is, as they're working to refurbish and remodel the high school that James Dean went to, and that would be a natural home for the James Dean Gallery to be in the future. But until then, we're happy to be able to preserve this part of Indiana history and work with the owner to keep the collection intact. Also in the Kruse Museum Complex is housed the Philo T. Farnsworth Television History Center. It tells the story of Philo T. Farnsworth, the inventor of television, and how he developed different aspects of the TV tube and imaging processor, and got to the point where he was able to actually project the image, live image on a screen.